Hey everybody, I wanted to take a stab at doing an educational video discussing what the occlusion effect is and why it's important to consider when we're doing testing. So let's take a look at this example here where we've got our little person here and we're doing some bone conduction testing. We've got this bone conducting vibrator on the right mastoid, and we're going to present a sound to that right cochlea through bone conduction at 10 dBHL. With bone conduction, we assume that there's a 0 dB interaural attenuation for bone conduction signals, and so we would guess that that sound is also reaching the left cochlea at about a level of 10 dB HL. So if we want to make sure that we're only measuring the response from the right ear, we would need to introduce a masking stimulus to cover up the sound in the left ear cochlea to make sure that the patient is only responding in the right ear. But when we plug up that ear, we end up hearing the bone conducted sound to the non-test ear. In this case, the left ear ends up sounding or ends up being measured at a level of about 15 or even more dB depending on the frequency. So this is the occlusion effect, this increased gain level just by plugging up the ear. And to understand it a little better, let's take a deeper look at that ear specifically. So here's a blown up model of the ear. We've got our outer ear, the ear canal, the tympanic membrane, the ossicular chain, and the cochlea. We have our bone conduction sound that's coming in from the right mastoid. And we have to remember that the ear canal is made up of two different parts. There's a bony portion and a cartilaginous portion. And when that bone conduction signal comes in, the bony part of the ear canal is also stimulated, and so that vibrates, and it vibrates the cartilaginous portion, and it creates a sound inside the ear canal. And most of the time, some of that sound leaves the ear canal, and some of that sound goes down the auditory pathway. It vibrates the eardrum, which vibrates the ossicles, which sends a signal down into the cochlea. But usually most of the sound leaves. When we plug up the ear to provide a masking stimulus to try and cover up that non-test ear, the sound that was trying to leave is no longer allowed to escape, and so it gets reflected and added to the signal that goes back down to the cochlea. And this results in an increased sound signal that goes down into the cochlea. To overcome that, we need to increase the masker to account for that occlusion effect. One of the big confusions is, well, I get that, that makes sense. If you're occluding it, it keeps the sound in the ear, so we need to raise the masker to always account for the occlusion effect. But I know that there's something that happens with conductive hearing loss that changes the rules a little bit. So what's the deal with conductive losses? Well, when you have a conductive loss, there's something that's blocking that reflected signal. So you've got some earwax or you've got some fluid in the middle ear system. And so when that even though that signal that's reflected has an increased sound pressure level, as it hits that earwax or it hits that fluid, that level also goes back down. And so you can negate the occlusion effect, or you can assume that the occlusion effect isn't a significant contributor to the signal that reaches the cochlea if there's a conductive loss. You can think of the occlusion effect as an air-conducted contribution to a bone conduction signal. That's all for this video. I hope this visualization helped you understand the occlusion effect a little bit more. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you good content. Thank you.